Good afternoon, all. My name is Rhiannon, and I'll be walking you through Team 3's review of the 787 Dreamliner project from its initial conception, through its challenges, and ultimately the opportunities that they had to take advantage of to become the product and company they are today. The introduction of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner project came at a time when it set new standards for commercial aviation, and it was a revolutionary aircraft for the future. Its initial conception was in 2004 due to the need for a replacement of the aging 767 that was the previous aircraft. Some of these key innovations that can be seen even in today's advanced models include utilizing composite materials for weight reduction, efficient engines with the goal of ensuring a 20% fuel consumption being lowered, as well as improving the comfort features for each passenger. In order to accomplish this, Boeing looked to take a bold leap forward, but unfortunately bit off a little more than they could chew, and they became a cautionary tale to advise future companies on how poor execution on complex innovation can collide and cause issues. Boeing's decision to change its traditional processes to pursue other outsourced production models can be defined by Dreamliner's challenges. Boeing decided to embrace an approach that was not only innovative, but focused on outsourcing its production of major aircraft systems to over 50 different suppliers worldwide. With this approach, it allowed for a shift in the developmental timeline for faster results. As we explore this case, we'll analyze how the product management and supply chain strategy with quality control helped to affect the Dreamliner's development, as well as provide lessons learned for the future. As Boeing began their outsourcing strategy for the 787, it was unprecedented from anything they had ever accomplished before. As you can see in this image, they had over 70% of the aircraft components being sourced from 50 different suppliers around the globe. The rationale then became to reduce costs and accelerate all of their production timelines. For example, their wings were manufactured in Japan, part of their fuselage in Italy, and other major systems being provided by the US and beyond. Boeing's main role was intended to have the final assembly in Washington and South Carolina. Their strategy aimed to reduce costs, but also accelerate production and tap into the specialized capabilities of international suppliers. Some of their most important partners included Mitsubishi for the wings, as well as Spirit Aerosystems in the US for the nose. Boeing also sourced engines from Rolls-Royce and General Electric. This offered airlines a choice of the power plants that they were using. By doing so, they had hoped to specialize their expertise, however, this would eventually backfire. Boeing as a company lacked the experience and infrastructure needed to manage the global supply chain. They began to have issues with suppliers missing their deadlines, components being faulty, or their technical capabilities started to miss most of their requirements. In order to help rework and reclaim production from their vendors, Boeing had to give a more hands-on approach instead of gaining efficiency. This eventually caused quality control breakdowns and rework required. The program suffered from significant cost overruns and delivery delays, pushing the first delivery of the 787 over 3 years past the original schedule. With the 3-year delay in product launch and the increased budget over time, Boeing almost didn't come back from their impact delays and cost overruns. Their product management approach had missteps that were not only affected their financial performance, but would ultimately tarnish part of their reputation within the industry. At the beginning, the original budget for the Boeing 787 began at $6 billion in order to help cover the idea of the first aircraft. It was intended for delivery in 2009, however, they didn't reach this launch until late 2011. This 3-year delay also ballooned into an overage about $32 billion in costs. This delay and the cost overruns led to the airline fleet strategies being disrupted, along with customer dissatisfaction and contractual penalties for the company. Instead of the airlines who had invested in the infrastructure training for the future, they were forced to help fill operational gaps and help restore the reputation of Boeing. Even though the Dreamliner project would eventually become a commercial success, the original key missteps included underestimating the supply chain complexity, poor risk management, and reliance on external management opportunities. The program suffered from a lack of visibility within the supply chain that would eventually cause the company to be blind to their problems within their factories. Boeing had relied on others creating optimistic projections and efficiencies that came with that, which meant that they could not allocate enough time for contingencies. Their robust risk mitigation strategies were put in place, and the reliance on external management led to a global nature compounded issue. With a lot of their supply chain working in different time zones, languages, or even business cultures, it was hard for them to manage and coordinate to ensure that the same goal for the Boeing 787 was achieved regardless of the factory location. So when looking at that through the design and development from a product management perspective, the 787 Dreamliner gave examples of innovation and operational complexity, but it also needed a balance. One of the critical lessons they learned was the importance of supply chain oversight. Boeing, when originally creating this idea, underestimated how difficult it would be to manage all of their different suppliers. They had come from different engineering cultures, different time zones, and ideals. By engaging in a more hands-on approach, including even early supplier audits or embedded engineering teams, they could have integrated a digital collaboration platform that would give them the opportunity to mitigate delays and improve component quality. Other improvements they could have made would have been incremental outsourcing. This would have helped with a failure and risk management. Boeing had assumed that all of their partners would have the technical capacity and capability to meet even the high standards of the Dreamliner program. Unfortunately, a majority of suppliers lacked any prior experience, and it caused difficulty in advancing to large-scale integration. A pilot production program would have allowed Boeing to identify the weak links in their management before it became a critical path blocker for the program. Another option of frequent checkpoints or escalation protocols would have been another improvement to offer to the team to help fill the need for quality control systems. As the complexity grew within this project, there was a need for Boeing suppliers to self-certify their work in order to keep things fast-paced. Without a robust verification procedure, there were errors that not only became apparent at the final assembly, but they could have been caught at the beginning of the quality assured system. Boeing also would have benefited from a cross-functional communication and systems integration. Their program became large-scale and required a project tracking system that was centralized and can house all shared engineering documentation and decision-making forums. By doing so, it would have allowed for a representation from each sector to review and detect early delays. For product managers, this is a critical part of any design and integration map, and was a core lesson Boeing took away from their product management steps. All ambitious technical goals must be matched with equally strong operational, logistic, and risk frameworks. The 787 Dreamliner case also further emphasized that having a competitive advantage in execution strategy isn't all that you need to be successful. While Boeing's aggressive shift to global outsourcing was a bold move, it lacked process maturity, contingency planning, and internal infrastructure. While it saw the breakthrough in numbers later on, they had stretched themselves too thin in the beginning and gave away control to other companies for key product components, and it led to unnecessary risks. Therefore, in order to help future scale operations, some of the recommendations that can be made are through a more measured approach, including 1-hour production for mission-critical systems can include initiatives such as the development of a hybrid supply chain model, real-time supplier performance tracking, and even early-stage supplier onboarding. A hybrid supply chain model allows for Boeing to maintain control over high-complexity portions of the 787 and so focus on their outsourcing. The shift then goes to outsourcing less critical modules to their more trusted partners. To help close technical gaps before scaling of future projects, we propose early-stage supplier onboarding, which can help to provide the resources that team members need. This includes capability assessment, trial runs, or even shared training modules to lower the risk on a prototype rather than a full-scale model. Finally, real-time supplier performance tracking gives a digital dashboard to create cross-functional oversight. A tiered contingency plan or service level agreements would help to bridge the product and engineering sections with the customer support and supply chain portion to ensure that all performance and progress are being tracked forward for the Boeing 787. The Dreamliner project became a technical and commercial success, but also gave the option to learn from early missteps. Product managers in any industry can learn from this case study and create their own visionary design, but also taking the lessons learned and applying these to recommendations for the future. Thank you.